So I'd like to welcome everyone. Can we all hear me okay? Excellent, thank you. So as more guests continue to join us, I'd love to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Jonah, and I'm a development officer of Signature Events at the Royal Alex Hospital Foundation. And I have the privilege of being here this evening alongside the incredible Lois Hole Women's Society, united in our mission to raise funds alongside all of you for the Lois Hole Hospital for Women. Welcome to our second Between Us series. I'm so excited to have you all here this evening, alongside all of these great panelists who've made time to be here with you tonight. We have an engaging evening planned with a timely discussion on nutrition and fitness led by Dr. Briana Botsford and registered dietitian Katie Henderson. Both Dr. Botsford and Katie are from Flow Functional Health Center Care. And now I'm pleased to welcome Becky McIntyre to share a special message with us.
Thank you so much, Steph. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Between Us. I am Becky McIntyre, and my pronouns are she, her. And I'm so excited to be here to represent the Lois Hole Hospital Women's Society on behalf of our co-chairs. Since our founding in 2017, we've raised over $1 million to support the Lois Hole Hospital for Women, thanks to supporters like many of you here. We're thrilled to have you here as we work to raise awareness and funds for Alberta's only dedicated women's hospital, which provides specialized care for women in all ages and stages of life. Our Between Us series was created to provide a safe space for discussing intimate and often overlooked subjects in women's health, such as personal health matters. So thank you for being here, for engaging and participating respectfully today. And of course, a huge heartfelt thank you to Alberta Blue Cross for their generous support as our presenting sponsor. Your commitment allows us to host this informative series and make a meaningful impact in our community. But just before we dive into tonight's session, let me share a few housekeeping tips for you. Please type your questions into the Q&A box for our speakers. Your questions will be answered at the end during a moderated Q&A period, and you can post them in the Q&A box anonymously. Anything that you post in the chat box is to the public. Everybody joining us here today can see those posts. And we're using Zoom webinar, so it's only our panelists and hosts that are visible, so you don't have to worry about your camera or your mute button. There'll be no funny happenings there. And this webinar can also do live transcripts, so if having a live transcript would support you in your experience today, go ahead and turn that on your own computer. And each lecture that we have in this Between Us series is recorded, and it's available later on the Women's Society YouTube channel. So you can always catch it after if there's a support or something you wanted to hear again, or maybe you want to share it with somebody who you think would also really appreciate the conversation today. And after the event, please do remember to fill out the feedback survey that will be emailed to you. You'll have a chance to win a $25 gift card courtesy of Alberta Blue Cross. So thank you, and I hope you find the session today valuable. Now, I'm going to pass this over to our wonderful representative from Alberta Blue Cross.
Thank you very much. My name is Ashley Balduke, and I'm from Alberta Blue Cross. My pronouns are she, her, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here tonight. At Alberta Blue Cross, we value the importance of talking about women's health. Knowledge on topics such as today's on fitness and nutrition can benefit us all as we strive to be well at all ages and stages of life. As always, we are very proud to be sponsoring this series. Before we begin our lecture, we would like to look to the guidance of Indigenous community leader Connie Callahoo Stonehouse to lead us through a land acknowledgement.
Tanse, greetings. We gather here in Treaty 6 territory, where the Blackfoot, the Cree, the Dene, the Nakota Sioux, the Anishinaabe, Saulteaux, the Métis, and the Iroquois peoples, which is my family, call this our homelands. During my grandparents' lifetimes, this land was not only their home, but their hospital and their healthcare system. Their health and well-being were connected to each other and to the land. The berries we picked, our medicines, sweetgrass, sage, bare root, and many others were all harvested in the rhythm of the seasons. The water they would drink was from the lakes and the rivers, where they would also fish to feed our families. We must not forget how important our connection to the land is. For the food we grow, the water we drink, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. I'm here to remind you, we still have much work to do in our relationship with the land, the water, and each other. As Treaty 6 relatives, we must remember what our ancestors agreed to. As long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the rivers flow, we will look after each other, the land, the water, and all the beings that we share these lands with. Hi, hi.
And I now have the honor of being able to introduce tonight's wonderful speakers. So first we have Dr. Briana Botsford. As a member of the local triathlon community, you might catch Dr. Botsford in full spandex on the weekends, cycling or running in Edmonton's glorious River Valley, which is funny and also true because I don't know if you know this, Briana, but I did actually see you a couple weekends or weeks ago on the trails, and it took me by surprise, but it was definitely you, and you were in spandex. But also, if you've been in one of these sessions before, you might recognize Dr. Botsford as a Lois Hole Hospital Women's Society member moderating these sessions. And if you have been here before, thank you so much for coming back. But back to Dr. Botsford's career. Because of her interest and participation in sport, she completed her education focused in sports medicine. As her career progressed, she began working with more and more women who may or may not be athletes, but have health issues. Her special interest is in women's health and performance, and she works with all humans to achieve their peak health and optimal well-being. And joining her today, we have Katie Henderson, a registered dietitian who is passionate about empowering her patients to learn how to fuel their unique body and its needs. Diagnosed with celiac disease at the age of 16, cooking and experimenting with food became a passion of hers. She learned how to create simple, nutritious meals and loves teaching others how food can help them feel their best. Ensuring our meals stay simple yet delicious is one of Katie's favorite niches to focus on. Katie loves working with a wide range of nutrition concerns. With her background as a national level gymnast, college level volleyball player, and qualified Team Canada triathlete member, wow, Katie specializes in sports nutrition and teaching patients how to properly fuel their training. From her own journey following her celiac diagnosis, Katie has great experience working through GI challenges, including nutrition around celiac disease, food intolerances, and bowel concerns. So happy to have you both here today, and Katie's cat, if it makes an appearance. I'm now going to pass it over to the two of you for our presentation tonight. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you for all of that. I will be starting part of the presentation tonight. So I'll just get my screen up if I can here. Okay, I will start from the beginning and just a thumbs up if you can all see that okay. Amazing. Okay, so I feel like I have so much to tell you tonight and talk about, and I have about 25 minutes to do all that in. So I am going to attempt to keep on track here and really talk about nutrition throughout the life stages. What we are going to be looking at is nutrition throughout the life stages and looking for some key nutritional strategies for pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause, postmenopause. So what this looks like is I'm going to highlight a couple key strategies in each of these stages of life. And I decided for my presentation, I wasn't going to do so much key nutrients, but more kind of these key strategies around concerns that come up in each kind of area. Now, as a dietitian, one of the things I love doing when I'm working with one-on-one is trying to teach you how you can add food in and in different ways versus try to take away. So I'm really hoping I can do just a little bit more of that for you today. starting out with some of the primary concerns in pregnancy. One of them is nausea. So another way we know about this is morning sickness. Although we call it morning sickness, this can happen any time of the day. And I was kind of shocked to know that, well, kind of, half of pregnant women will experience this at some point, nausea and vomiting, and the symptoms are often much worse in the first trimester. So the reason for this discomfort is because of the changes in hormonal levels during pregnancy. And the things that actually make nausea worse is stress, which we probably all are at that time, not eating regularly, traveling, and sometimes certain foods as well, which we'll talk about here. But I always like to, when somebody comes into me, I've heard many times, they're like, Katie, I swear it's just in my head. I don't know why. And it is not. It is a very real thing. So I wanted to kind of give you some really key tips that we can use to help reduce this nausea as much as we can. And so if we start thinking about the morning, I recommend getting up really slowly and leaving a box of crackers or plain toast right by your bedside. This can help settle your stomach before you even get up. Another couple ones are just eating small, regular meals about every 1 to 2 hours instead of these big meals like a big breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Another couple is limiting caffeine, chocolate, spicy, and fatty foods if that is a trigger or concern for you. Another way we can do this is just reducing the smell of food at home by just asking others to cook for you or opening up some windows so the smells don't create more of that nausea as well. When I work with my patients, we always say, okay, well, what time of day is this happening? Like, which days are you feeling the most nauseous? And there's usually a time around it. So I like to either front load your day with nutrition or backload it, depending when you are finding that nausea is hitting you. To help support you, we can get in as much nutrients as possible the other times, and then we can settle into smaller snacks or some things that are easier on your stomach afterwards. Another one is just get tons of rest. When you are tired, the nausea is worse, and I like to try to improve that, so focusing on that sleep is really important as well. Now, another concern when it comes to pregnancy is the heartburn. So heartburn is going to happen because there is a lot of pressure on your stomach, which means the contents of the food are going to back up, as well as your pregnancy hormones are going to slow that movement of food through your body, which can cause more of the heartburn. And lots of time we feel it as that burning in your chest, but you might feel it too as the sour taste in your mouth. And so the ways that we address heartburn are very similar to treating nausea and vomiting. So I use a lot of those same strategies, but some extra ones are specifically avoiding that caffeine, tea, or high-fat food. That can often slow down the digestion of your food as well if the meal is too high in fat, meaning the food will back up. Another way we can do that is just making sure we eat small meals several times a day, and even spreading out your fluids from your meals. Common triggers, though, with the heartburn are things like really strong spices, peppermint, chocolate, citrus fruits and juices, onions, garlic, and tomato. So I like working with my patients kind of one-on-one to figure out what is a trigger for them and ways we can just swap those foods out with others to help reduce that. And the last concern I'm going to talk about when it comes to pregnancy is constipation. I'm going to talk about constipation more than once in this presentation. And as a dietitian, I probably talk about poop a billion times a day. So this is something women experience through pregnancy, and we're also going to learn through later life hormonal changes as well. But not only is it because of the hormones, it's also due to the position of the baby. It can put a lot of pressure down on our digestion, and it can make it really hard to have a bowel movement. Again, there are a lot of hemorrhoids that are very common in pregnancy as well, and we do want to kind of reduce that risk, and adding in fiber is one of the key ways. So we can add in fiber, I say low and slow, which means we don't need to jump up and load in a whole bunch of fiber the next day or your stomach will be screaming at you. We do it slowly by adding an extra fruit in, adding an extra veggie and sprinkling bran buds on certain things. Maybe adding in more beans and lentils. And I have tons of fun tips of how to do that. So on this next slide, I just wanted to teach you or give you an idea of 2 easy ways that we can actually add fiber in, and you might not even mind it too much. So one is using, let's say, a Greek yogurt parfait. So taking your Greek yogurt, throwing berries on top, which are loaded in fiber already, and then sprinkling bran buds as well on top. They're crunchy. Some people love them. Some people say they taste like horse food. You can try it out and decide. The other one is just even taking a high fiber wrap. So lots of times I can help my patients just understand, what do I even look for to make sure my wrap or my bread is high fiber? Getting something high fiber, putting peanut butter, maybe some almond butter or a banana in there, and sprinkling on some ground flax and chia seeds and just rolling it up. That is actually a very high fiber snack and is also going to keep you full for quite a long time. Now, if I talk about fiber, I cannot skip talking about fluids. When we increase the fiber in our diet, it actually draws in more water. And if we are not taking in enough fluid, we will find that we will just get very constipated. So our body also needs a lot of blood volume, and getting in this water will actually supply nutrients to your baby, getting rid of waste products as well. So we have to aim for about 3 liters a day. Now, on the postpartum side of things, I wanted again to, I know we're going fast, but I wanted to give you 3 key things too of nutrition strategies I like to support my moms with. So the very first one is eat often and eat enough. Now, this is probably one of the biggest struggles I see with all the sleep disturbances. You're caring for your new little one. It is easy to get or to forget about meals and just skip them. And so this is the very first strategy. We need to provide you with many eating opportunities throughout the day so you have enough of the nutrients coming in to keep your blood sugars stable throughout the day, but also to support you as a breastfeeding mom for the extra nourishment you actually need and to support the lactation. So meals regularly throughout the day, we talk about snacks, mini snacks or snack breaks as much as possible. Now, when we are looking at snacks, it needs to be the right snack. So what I look for, and on the next slide, I'm going to show you a bunch of different ideas, but we need to pair together protein and carbohydrates. Our protein are going to be found in foods like your eggs, your fish, your tofu, your beans, your meat, dairy, nuts. These help you stay full and sustain your energy, while carbohydrates are the one that kind of acts as that gasoline, that energy system for your brain, your muscles, and your organ. And they are also great for boosting mood. So those carbohydrates, we can find them in breads, rice, pasta, crackers, fruits, and veggies. And by selecting these 2 together, you sustain your energy much, much longer. And I'm going to give you a few examples of that on the next page. The last tip that I love talking about is keeping snacks and fluids within arm's reach. So lots of times we talk about, okay, think of all the different rooms that you and baby go into, and let's set up a basket. Let's set up a basket of shelf-stable snacks. So things like trail mix, things like those dried edamame beans or fava beans, or a protein bar or a high-fiber granola bar that you can even sit down and kind of snack on, whether you're breastfeeding or playing in that room, as well as water bottles. If there's a water bottle in every single room, you are more likely to drink. So just some ideas here for snacks. These are just a list of really simple ideas for adding that protein and fiber together. I also love the snack ideas that you can eat with one hand because your other hand is going to be pretty preoccupied. So something like a cheese string actually will give you 7 to 8 grams of protein in the cheese string. and then adding maybe an apple or even a banana on the side with it. I like to highlight here our sandwiches. So sandwiches are my absolute favorite meal ever for any time of day, but they can also be a great snack if you want to make sandwiches in the morning and have those a couple times in the day. Hard-boiled eggs, edamame beans with veggies, even some oatmeal with some high-protein milk, such as a Fairlife milk, or even there's a Natrel Plus milk out there to boost your protein intake. These are all great ideas, and they don't require too much to prep. Now, we have to shift into perimenopause, and there are lots of hormonal changes that come up. So some of them, and so what I want to do in this section is take all of these different concerns and then show you how we can actually apply some nutrition strategy to support you with this. So for example, whether it's the lowered energy levels and fatigue, the mood swings, the sleep disruptions, the weight gain, the reduced muscle mass, the bone density concerns, our increased risk of heart disease, or our gastrointestinal changes. I'm going to highlight different strategies and some simple little changes you can make to support you with some of these. So to start out, for the lower energy levels and fatigue and the mood swings, I always say eat regular meals. So kind of like we were talking about again with the postpartum, and then marrying your carbs and protein together. Those two should not be alone, and they need to stay together. So one of the most important ways to help us actually manage our mood throughout the day is to make sure that we don't have these really big highs or lows of energy crashes. And we do that by pairing these carbohydrates with these protein. It prevents those roller coasters in our mood. So one big question I always get asked is like, okay, Katie, what does regular meals look like? And what is regular meal times? So the very base is we need 3 meals a day. So that's your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner. Now, if you think about the time of these, I want you to make sure that these meals are never more than 4 to 5 hours apart, unless you're adding a snack in between. So this snack not only helps stabilize that mood and that energy level throughout the day, but another great thing with a snack in the afternoon, it really prevents you going into that next meal hangry. And if anybody has waited way too long to go into their next meal, they eat a significant amount more, or they eat really the whole pantry before they get to the meal. So working on these really balanced snacks can support us quite a bit. Weight gain and reduced muscle mass. Now, these are two big concerns I hear a lot of my perimenopausal women coming in discussing. And it's our metabolism does slow down about 5 to 10% every year in our 20s and 30s leading on. And so lots of this is due to the loss of muscle mass, but also to the changes in hormones. So the key thing I want you to remember is we need to eat this balanced plate, and we need to maintain as much muscle as possible. We're going to maintain our muscle in 2 different ways. One way in which Dr. Botsford is going to be discussing quite a bit about exercise leading up, but also to protein. Now, protein in women in midlife should really strive to eat adequate amounts of protein at every meal. And the reason for this is we want to stimulate what's called muscle protein synthesis. This is just your body's ability to continue building muscle. The more muscle we have, the higher the metabolically active our bodies are, and as well, the more our bones are supported for down the road with our osteoporosis concerns as well. So what does it mean to prioritize protein at every meal? This is optimally aiming, and where I start, this is just an average, but about 25 to 30 grams of protein at meals to stimulate our body's ability to build muscle. As well, I need this spread out throughout the day. I can't just have you eating 90 grams at lunch and nothing at breakfast and dinner. We just want to really spread this out so your body has numerous opportunities to build this muscle. Now, I like having a conversation first off about breakfast when it comes to this. Because lots of my patients come to me and they're like, Katie, I'm eating a high protein breakfast already. And I ask a little bit more about what they're eating, and they say, I'm eating 2 eggs. And 2 eggs actually would give you 14 grams of protein. That's only half the amount of protein I really want you to be eating at breakfast. So on this next slide, I want to give you a quick fun video. Now let's hope it works. If there's no sound, there actually does not need to be a sound, so I'll walk you through it after. But this is just one way and kind of an example of how I help people just do a few tweaks to their meal that will actually boost the protein. So what this is a breakfast bagel that will give you 40 grams of protein. And so what they took is they took 2 eggs, they scrambled them up, they took tomatoes, peppers, red onion, and then they threw on some cottage cheese and Greek yogurt, and that everything but the bagel seasoning that's at Costco, and it's delicious. And they chopped it all up and threw it on their bagel. So now breakfast became 40 grams. So that's just one example of how we can just make these small changes that can really make a big difference. When it comes to your lowered bone density and the increase of osteoporosis and the increased risk of our heart disease, the key things we want to do is focus on whole foods. So the best protection against heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis is for women going through perimenopause and into menopause to emphasize whole foods. The most important thing about this is we want to focus on what to add more of. So when I talk about adding more of, I talk about adding more whole grains, more legumes, more nuts, more beans, more seafood, more olive oil. All of these have really good health, heart health properties. They're high in calcium for the bone health, and as well as my absolute favorite topic, which I will discuss again, are fiber. So the more whole foods we get, the more of these increases in fiber. Now, fiber I love for a billion reasons. Not only will it help with those gastrointestinal changes due to lots of those hormonal shifts, but fiber is key. And I remember my fiber for 3 Fs. My fiber helps me stay full and it helps me fart. So it does help that digestion, but it helps you stay full, which can really support and help with some of the weight management and those changes we start noticing as well. In addition, though, fiber helps drop down our cholesterol levels. And so with that, we just increase our heart health by adding more into our meals. Again, we want to start low and slow, a couple pieces of fruit, a couple extra veggies, maybe mixing in lentils into our rice to boost the fiber, or adding some different ground flax, chia seeds in our oatmeal at breakfast to boost it as well. As we get older, we're aiming for closer to that 25 grams per day, more on the low end. And lots of times we are significantly under that. So it can really notice a bunch of changes of how full you feel after meals if we can work on adding some of this in. Now, shifting into menopause, I wanted to highlight 3 different foods that we can enjoy more of during this time. Starting with my favorite and probably most controversial is soy. It is one of the most controversial, and I'll explain a little bit more about why. So soy and soy products contain what are called isoflavones, and many of these are called phytoestrogens. These can actually potentially, because they mimic a little bit of the estrogen in our system, they can help reduce some of the hot flash symptoms that occur in menopause. And so what are we looking at adding? We're looking at adding about 1 to 2 servings a day. And it's funny because when I talk about soy, people will ask me a little bit about cancer risk, which I'll talk about, but they also don't quite know that it includes more than just soy milk and tofu. So there are soybeans, edamame, there's tempeh, which is a fermented soybean, miso, and then also soy milk to add into things. Now, with the concern on soy and breast milk, or soy and breast cancer, there has been a lot of research conducted in this area, and even on women who are breast cancer survivors, and evidence has found that women who did consume soy foods did not have an increased risk of breast cancer, and it is actually really heart healthy as well. So this is one we can add in for sure. We don't recommend the soy supplementation right now, just because it is so much of a higher concentration, and just there's not enough studies, and the connection with that is unclear. So we add the food in, and we can see what happens with the hot flashes in moderation. The other one I like to talk about is adding more omegas. So the omega-3 fats are not only beneficial for our heart health, but they can actually support to reducing some mood swings and hot flashes as well. So when we look at our omegas, we can get it in what's called the EPA and DHA, more so in our fatty fish. So adding in some salmon, mackerel, sardines. I never push the sardines too much unless people are really into it, but we talk a lot about the salmon. Or we can get some more of our omegas to top things off, more so of that ALA omega in the nuts and seeds. We'll go back. More so in our nuts and seeds, our chia seeds, our walnuts, and even our flaxseed oils to boost some more of the heart health. So we're focusing on our soy, our omegas, and our calcium-rich foods. This is really just mostly due to the low bone or our bone loss and risk of osteoporosis, as well as so we think about a lot of the bone health when it comes to our calcium-rich foods, but it also protects us against heart disease and can support reducing our blood pressure. So if any of those concerns are popping up, I love adding these in as well. Now, supplementation can help if we cannot achieve it through food itself, but it's not only going to come from our dairy products, which most people think about, like yogurts, milks. It can also come from canned salmon if you mash and leave the bones in. It can come from tofu that's fortified. We can get some through our beans and lentils. And I love sending people over to the osteoporosis calcium calculator, where they can put in their daily intake and they can actually see if they're achieving the 1200 milligrams per day if you are in this age range where those are your targets. If not, we can come and chat about how to get that up. And I was at 24 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm not sure.
Amazing.
Will we do questions now, Brie?
We'll do them all together at the end. So thank you so much. That was so awesome. And I know there will be lots of nutrition questions that we'll be able to answer. So I will just jump in here and share my screen. And I'm going to be chatting about exercise across the lifespan. And I did want to acknowledge that I will be speaking about exercise, and often I'll be referring to movements or exercise types that might not be appropriate for all bodies. Exercise is almost always safe, and we want to kind of shift that paradigm from fear of movement and fear of exercise. However, if you do have concerns about initiating an exercise plan, please fill out what's called a PAR-QX, and you can also meet with your doctor to make sure that it's a good option for you. But it's almost always safe, and we definitely want to increase our physical activity level generally overall, and you're going to find a little bit more about why. We're going to talk about what exercise is best, how should we change our exercise routines as we advance through our lifespan, and a little bit about how can you actually stick to your exercise habit, because I think we all probably know I should exercise, but all the things. So we'll go through that as well. The best exercise is the exercise that you'll actually do. I'm giving you the really annoying answer first. With what trips a lot of patients up is that they feel like they have to be perfect, or like there's a specific set of exercises that they have to do in order to like achieve their goals. There's one size fits all approach to movement or well-being, and really the reality is that even though we'd love to say that there's a specific guideline, and we do have our best guesses at what those guidelines might be, the human factors that play into the execution of exercise are always going to be a variable. If I go ahead and tell you that mountaineering is the best form of exercise for your heart, but you live downtown Edmonton, that's probably not going to be helpful, right? If I tell you that aquasize is the best form of exercise for your heart, but you never learned how to swim, that's also not super helpful. So we always have to take into account the human in the room before we're making like a blanket statement about any type of exercise. This is the physical activity guideline for primary prevention of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And so that's basically the buildup of plaques in the arteries that can affect and put us at risk for heart attacks and strokes. And so I pulled this guideline. It's similar to Health Canada's guideline, but this one's a little bit more specific than Health Canada's guideline of engaging in a minimum of 150 minutes per week. And so I do like a little bit more specificity, and I'm going to explain a little bit about why. So we do know that adults should engage in about 150 minutes of exercise accumulated moderate intensity, and I'm going to explain what that is, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise, and that's more so aerobic physical activity, or an equivalent combination of both. And the combination part always feels a little bit confusing when you think about that. It's like, what does that actually mean? I gave you an example here of 100 minutes of moderate intensity and then 25 minutes of vigorous intensity. So basically you're counting your vigorous intensity as double the moderate intensity. And it's really important that I point out here that for adults that can't meet the minimum guidelines, engaging in some kind of moderate or vigorous physical activity, even if it's less than recommended, is still going to be beneficial to reduce cardiovascular disease risk and other disease risks, including things like osteoporosis, mental health challenges like depression, and so many other things. We know that more exercise is probably better. So on the one side, we're like, if you can't do 150 minutes a week, that's okay, still move your body. And on the other side, we're like, it's also probably better if we do more than 150 minutes of exercise per week. And that we do see an additional risk reduction in specifically cardiovascular disease in those who are doing more than 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity or 150 minutes of vigorous aerobic physical activity. So the reason that we set the bar low is so that people can achieve it and it still has an impact on cardiovascular disease risk. But we do know that like the more activity you do beyond that, the more your risk does decrease. So it's valuable to know that. If you're not achieving the minimum, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You can still do something every day to be active. And we're going to talk more about what that could look like as well. So when you look at what moderate intensity exercise is, we're looking at things like brisk walking, biking. I mean, how much snow did we all get today? I don't know that I'm going to be out on my bike anytime soon. But there are the hardcore folks that do ride their bikes throughout the winter. Ballroom dancing made the list, active yoga and recreational swimming. When you flip over to the vigorous intensity exercise, we're looking at things like jogging or running, biking faster than 20 kilometers an hour. So like you're riding your bike on a mission. Singles tennis, and I put here maybe pickleball would count towards that as well, because I know that's an emerging popular sport, and lap swimming. So that's more swimming with like intention or getting your heart rate up a little bit higher. And all of these examples come from the American Heart Association's 2019 guideline on primary prevention of cardiovascular disease. These are activities that actually don't count as exercise. And the one that I hear all the time in my office is gardening. I know it's not gardening season, but I want to remind you that while gardening is so good for so many reasons, it actually doesn't count as exercise. It's not necessarily sedentary, which is good. And we're going to talk more about reducing sedentary activities, so less sitting. But these things actually don't count towards our physical activity for the week. And so they're not counting towards that 150 minutes total. So things like cooking, light housework, like cleaning, slow walking, and then of course, sadly, gardening. When we go back to that question of what a type of exercise is best, you'll notice that in the general guidelines, we just say 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity a week. We don't specify like how much strength training or what type of aerobic exercise might be best for our heart system, our respiratory system. We do know that that cardiovascular type of exercise, so aerobic exercise, jogging, biking, swimming, walking with your heart rate up, is going to help our cardiovascular and respiratory systems the most. But we don't say like, oh, biking is specifically the best, right? We also know that strength training has so many benefits, including assisting with maintaining lean muscle mass and weight management. And Katie nodded to that when she was talking about perimenopause and menopause, and I'm gonna talk about that too. But it's really important that we move towards weight training and try and incorporate that into our routines because that really helps us to maintain not only our bones, but also our muscle. The other thing is that obesity or high visceral fat around the organs, a high waist to hip ratio, so carrying more weight around the midsection, also carries some risk for cardiovascular disease. And even though our guidelines don't specifically include strength training, if managing body composition is an issue, or we're aiming for weight loss, like weight loss may be desired for a patient, or I should say fat loss may be desired for a patient to improve their heart disease risk or any disease risk, we may include strength training in that plan, because we know that the more muscle we have, the more metabolically active we are, which is what Katie alluded to, where basically the more muscle you have, the higher your basal metabolic rate is. And that means you're burning more calories at rest when you're sitting here on this call versus if you have less muscle, you're burning less calorie at rest. So metabolically active tissue, muscle specifically, is really protective for many reasons, but body composition is one of those. These are the hours of activity that folks spend doing a variety of things throughout their day. And you can see how much of our day is spent sedentary and how much of our day is spent doing light activities. And then how much of our day is really spent in that moderate or vigorous. And so I would challenge all of us to be inspired to incorporate maybe even more of that moderate intensity or vigorous intensity activity, and decrease our sedentary behaviors by including some more light movements, light activities. So we do want to encourage folks to move more and sit less. And I always talk about movement snacks. So we do have research that's been published that says that reducing sedentary behavior can reduce our risk of variety of diseases. So what I mean by that is spending less time sitting can reduce our risk of many different diseases. It doesn't doing movement snacks. So what I mean by that is like sitting to standing 10 times, doing like mini squats, or running up and down your stairs 4 times if you're working from home. Or it could be doing like 10 jumping jacks, those kinds of things. They don't count towards your 150 minutes or 75 minutes, whatever guideline you're going with, the vigorous or the moderate. They don't count towards those, but it's reducing the amount of time that you're spending sitting, and that can be valuable. So that's kind of the quick overview of what we recommend as far as baseline physical activity guidelines. We're going to talk about each life stage and specific to women's health. I am going to use gendered language in my descriptions, and that is not meant to exclude anyone. I do strive. I know that not everybody who identifies as a woman deals with the different women's health issues that I am going to talk about, things like osteoporosis and so on. And I want to do my best to provide an inclusive space for all gender identities. So digging into this article first, very gendered, but at the same time, very important, I think. In this article, just was revised on November 19th. It was in the New York Times. Women get less exercise than men. It's a problem. Basically, this was describing how there's many more barriers to physical activity for women to be as active as men, and that's a problem for our health and our longevity. And our longevity at quality of life was something that they pointed out really poignantly in this article. What I thought was really interesting is that they nodded to, while women do outlive men as far as lifespan, we have a poorer quality of life in those last years of our life. So women tend to be suffering more, less mobile, less capable. And it's not 100% related to this gender gap in physical activity, but I think it's important to acknowledge that it is potentially more difficult for women to engage in physical activity because of so many demands. And you can see some of those demands in this little cartoon. I can see the laundry there, the two kids, the work laptop, and grandma there. So, you know, we're all juggling a lot. And if you're not meeting the physical activity guidelines, don't despair. But I think this tells us that we need to ask for more support so that we can get our activity in, and we need to prioritize our self-care as women to get this stuff done, to take care of ourselves. So I'm going to talk about different decades of life here, and there's no magic like change when you turn 29 to 30 that you actually need to change things with your physical activity. But I just wanted to nod to what would be important at each different phase of the lifespan. What's really important in the 20s and even the late teens is that there's a significant drop off in activity in women around age 15. So a ton of women and girls drop out of sport around age 15 for a variety of reasons. And we do see that re-engaging in physical activity is just really important. So trying to get these young adolescents and 20s, early or young adults back into physical activity is really important. So finding a routine that these folks enjoy is going to be very important, and making sure that they're adequately fueled. So on the flip side of this, we have highly active individuals excuse me, similar to, you know, Katie has experience as a high level gymnast. I have experience as a moderately okay triathlete, having been underfueled in my 20s. And so if you're not getting adequate nutrition as a high level athlete, that puts you at a high risk of osteoporosis later in your lifespan. So we have both sides here where we have our highly active individuals that we need to make sure we're fueling really well. And then we have our individuals who have stepped away from sport for a variety of reasons. And we are trying to re-engage them into physical activity. So we really want to focus on building healthy habits in this decade of life, because peak bone mass occurs around age 25, and then it's all downhill. But what happens actually after age 25 is it is a slow decline in our bone mass as we advance in our lifespan. But being physically active, in addition to adequate calcium intake, vitamin D, all of those things, nutrition, does slow the rate at which that we decline. And so it's really important to have that understanding early on in life. More folks are having children in their 30s, and that's an important consideration, I think, even when we looked at that New York Times article. Whether you have babies in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, or whenever, pregnancy is a time that you can lose a lot of muscle mass because of reductions in physical activity. Now, I want to be really clear that exercise is recommended in all low risk pregnancies, and no changes need to be made immediately when somebody discovers that they're pregnant. However, I always recommend to my patients that they consult with a pelvic floor physical therapist or a trainer that is educated in perinatal, so pregnancy and postpartum training, to take care of their core and pelvic floor. And keeping active should be prioritized over fear of exercise in pregnancy. And in most cases, it's safe. There are always going to be high-risk pregnancy exceptions, and they will receive specific guidance from their OB or primary care provider in their pregnancy. But for the most part, we're encouraging that 150 minutes per week or more in pregnancy. And so when we go into postpartum and beyond, we're looking at the challenges of parenthood, the challenges of all the things that we need to juggle, and how can we fit more physical activity into our lives. And I know that that is not a unique challenge to women, but as I pointed out, it seems like there is a gender gap when it comes to physical activity. In perimenopause, so this is perimenopause is defined as anything in the 7 to 10 years before or after the last menstrual period. So menopause is actually the last the 1 year anniversary of your last menstrual period. So menopause is 1 day. Everything before that is perimenopause, and everything after that is postmenopause. But our risk of cardiovascular disease does go up significantly as estrogen goes down, and so we want to ensure that we're incorporating physical activity, specifically aerobic physical activity, to make sure that we are taking care of our hearts and reducing that cardiovascular disease risk. Now, I know I also have in here strength, 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 and can I say it again, strength, because again, building lean muscle is going to help to maintain bone mass, and it's going to help to maintain our basal metabolic rate. So when I refer to progressive loading, what I'm referring to is structured programming around increasing the amount of weight or the reps that you're doing. And so working with somebody who is educated in this area, and I'm happy to provide resources. I have my email at the end of this presentation. You're more than welcome to contact me with recommendations for local or online resources. However, there are lots of online folks and things like that do teach good quality programming. But there's also this idea of like, I did a YouTube video and now I'm going to be strong. But if we're not progressing through different programming, we may not actually be building muscle. We might be maintaining our muscle, and that's still good, but we want to try and build lean muscle as well as maintain it. We add mobility in here in your 40s and your 50s because we want to stay mobile and not so snap, crackle, poppy. As we move into the 6th decade of life and beyond, we start to see an increase in fall risk. And I'm well aware that life does not end at 60. And I didn't feel that our guidelines really change much, or our recommendations rather don't really change much. I think the main inflection points happen around pregnancy and perimenopause. And then beyond, we're looking at that fall and fracture risk. And so if people are at risk for osteoporosis, then a fall can mean a fracture. And something that's a really sad and scary statistic to me is that a mortality rate in the first year after a hip fracture is approximately 20%. So that means there's a lot of deaths that occur in the year following a hip fracture. And so it's really important that we do our primary prevention. And when we look at balance training, we're sliding this in here to work on proprioception, so balance, mobility in there as well. We just want to maintain our ability to move with ease and be strong in our bodies. One thing that's really near and dear to me is when I was in my undergrad at Queen's University, I took a course about physical activity for older adults. And my dad had to have been like 55 at the time, or something in there. And I remember calling him and being like, Dad, you've got to start doing squats. You got to start doing squats because you got to be able to get out of a chair without using your hands. My dad, my adorable dad. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do that. I'm going to start doing squats. And he goes and he gets a trainer and he does all the things. And My dad actually takes almost all of the health or physical activity advice that I offer him, which is so lovely. But he, to this day, he's 76 years old. And one of the things that warms my heart the most is watching him get up and down off the floor, playing with my son, who's 3.5. And so staying active is just so important, so that we can do those things that we want to do. And of course, that's true for men and for women, right? So maintaining mobility and balance and being able to move with ease, that's goals. So the bottom line here, as far as exercise recommendations go, is that we want to make sure we're moving 150 minutes a week. We want to make sure that we're combining cardiorespiratory and strength training. We get support if we need it. So a trainer, a physio. I think pelvic physio is important to remember again here, because we all tend to deal with pelvic floor issues, and that can change throughout the lifespan. One of the best exercises for osteoporosis or prevention of osteoporosis is jumping rope. And the number of times that I say that to women and they're like, you want me to what now? And I'm going to pee myself. That doesn't have to be true. So it's important to add pelvic physio in if we have any pelvic floor concerns, and that could include urinary incontinence, it could include fecal incontinence, and it could include things that we may not think of being associated with exercise, but can be affected by a tight or unhappy pelvic floor, things like pain with sex. Vaginal dryness can also aggravate urinary incontinence when we're postmenopausal and we're trying to exercise. So sometimes a little baby dose of vaginal estrogen can go a long way and get you jumping rope again. Movement snacks and reducing sedentary activity. So we want to make sure that if we can, we're reducing the amount of time that we're spending sitting. I know before we jumped on this call, I was telling in the pre-meeting how I had been working from home today, and I have to be really intentional when I'm working from home. There's a part of me that wants to bring a kettle down into the basement so I never have to go up the stairs to fill up my tea. And there's another part of me that knows that I absolutely need to be going up the stairs to fill up the kettle and get my tea, because that's exactly what a movement snack is. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the how of exercise. And this is very individual, but I want you to understand a concept called self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is task-specific confidence. And so what that means is the more times you do a thing, the more likely your brain is to think that you can do the thing. Okay. And so when I say you need to go out and you need to exercise 150 minutes a week, if you're currently moving 30 minutes a week, that's going to sound unachievable, right? But if we set your bar at 60 minutes, you're like, well, I can already do 30. So I'm pretty confident that I can do 60. So we want to start with those incremental goals. We want to make sure that you feel confident about your approach to physical activity so that you can actually engage in it. Accountability also helps hugely when we're looking at health behavior change. And so having an accountability buddy, whether that's a friend or a colleague, if you're at the office and you're like, I'm going for my movement snack up to the 10th floor or whatever, they might be your accountability buddy and come with you to keep you moving, and you can work really well together as a team. There we go. So there's my contact information there. Both Katie and I are from Flow Functional Healthcare. I own the clinic. We're a multidisciplinary clinic. And so we have a variety of team members that help people sift through the overwhelming amount of health information that is out there and come up with a strategic plan for your nutrition, your exercise, whatever it needs to be, so that you can go from feeling overwhelmed and exhausted to vibrant and energized. So that's who we are and what we do. I would love to answer some of these questions. And I didn't mention, but I know Becky mentioned at the beginning, I am a proud supporter of the Lois Hole Hospital Women's Society. And this is my typical role where I do the Q&A at the end. So I'm just going to put those shoes back on and read you some of these questions there, Katie.
Perfect.
The first one actually you might be able to answer, but I might chime in too. If you have had blood clots in the past, are soy foods safe? I'm wondering, as I am not allowed to have oral estrogen, I'm in menopause.
Amazing. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, Brie. With my experience with this, I'd really like to just understand a little bit more about kind of your whole health history too, and some other medications you might be on. Overall,
Mhm.
it can be something that we can add in, but I'd like to check out if we're on some blood thinners or if there's any interactions as well we might want to take a look at.
Mhm. Yeah, the thing with soy foods and phytoestrogens is that they're not actual estrogen.
Yeah, they wouldn't impact. Oh, I think you froze on my end, Brie, but
Yeah, I think she did. She must have. She's
she is, and
stuck
so
in that position now. So yeah, you can, if you have more to say, carry on, and then I can jump in for Briana while she's like figures out her connection.
totally. And so the plants, and this is kind of the concern where people come into with us saying, is there a risk of breast cancer? It does not. It has estrogen similarities, but it is not estrogen itself. So in that case, no. When it comes to the blood clots, I would just look a little bit more at all your medical history there.
Awesome. Thanks. So the next question that's on there, while Brianna will jump in when she's able. But how important is vitamin D and K2, especially in peri and postmenopause? And what are your recommendations, Katie?
Amazing. Okay, I like this one. So yeah, K2, it is a unique vitamin that most people don't know, but we can actually produce this in our bodies through a healthy gut microbiome. So a healthy gut microbiome, though, really requires us to have that balanced diet full of high fiber, fruits, vegetables. And because menopausal women are at risk for osteoporosis, that vitamin K can help the healthy bone structure. However, we only need small amounts and we can actually get it through our diet itself. So things like the food sources we're looking at are like dark leafy greens. We can add in broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and kiwi, and we would be able to achieve taking that in ourselves through food. When it comes to vitamin D, again, kind of the same thing. It does help with our bone health. This one, though, we do need to find a supplementation. So we can get some through our food, so some smaller amounts. So in our egg yolks, in fortified milk or orange juice, even some fatty fish, but we still require a supplementation. So up to 70 years of age, we can look at about 600 international units. Over 70, we're looking at closer to 800 international units. However, we can add more, and there can be higher levels just based off of individuals as well.
So thank you so much. So there's another one in here. It says, I'm concerned about increased calorie intake with increasing so much protein, which you talked lots about. So can you speak to that concern?
Amazing. So this is actually one that I find is fun to work with. So when I add in, and it's funny, when we add in whole foods, kind of what happens to our overall intake. And this is something that I find that people sometimes don't realize. So for example, if we're adding more protein into your diet, it can actually, and more fiber, you feel more full and our actually overall calorie intake reduces. So it's funny because I add in food to people and I always say, especially at breakfast, when we're trying to get that 30 grams of protein, they look at me and they're like, Katie, this is so much food. And research has showed that if we get a high protein, high fiber breakfast, even if it's more calories than you are normally going to take in, our actual overall calorie intake in the day reduces. So it's kind of putting it all together. It's adding more of these whole foods in. And it's absolutely a fear I talk about a lot with my patients when we talk about adding that food in. But your body balances out and you will actually feel more full.
Amazing. What's the question here? I see Brianna is back on, by the way.
I am so sorry, and I lost all the Q&A, so you will have to do the job. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all good. No problem. So I'll jump to the next one. So what advice do you have for someone suffering from chronic pain due to arthritis? Well,
Yeah.
either of you can take, yeah.
Yeah. So, with respect to physical activity, typically we do think that activity does not aggravate like the actual degeneration in the joints. When it comes to rheumatoid arthritis or inflammatory arthritis, this is not caused by wear and tear. It's caused by an autoimmune process that breaks down the joint surfaces. And so, staying mobile within your pain threshold. And one of the things that's really tough with autoimmune diseases is it can wax and wane and it can be really unpredictable. And so when you're having a good day, you don't necessarily want to use all of your energy on physical activity. However, we do know that movement can help. I often recommend gentle movement, like things like swimming, where you're actually offloading the joints or you have some buoyancy. Things like yoga, although I know sometimes people find it really hard on their wrists. I know Katie can probably speak to some foods that can be incorporated for rheumatoid conditions. One thing I will say before I let you jump in, Katie, is that when we're talking about arthritis, I'm speaking right now about rheumatoid arthritis or inflammatory arthritis. Osteoarthritis is the degenerative type of arthritis where you're having your joints wear down over time. And so when you look at osteoarthritis, a lot of people worry that being active is going to worsen that wear and tear on their joints. And we actually have so much research that it supports healthy joints. So even knee osteoarthritis, where you could have bone on bone arthritis in your knee, like you have no cartilage left, we actually want you to move. And there's a great program called the GLAD program. And you can Google that GLAD program. Alberta Health Services offers it for knees and I think lower back pain now. And it's specific exercises that have been shown to help with osteoarthritis and not harm it. So that's a really great resource that's accessible for a lot of folks.
Awesome. Did you have something you wanted to add, Katie?
Sure. And just for the arthritis and just even like Brie was talking about like the inflammation going on in our body, there are a lot of anti-inflammatory foods we can add in. So again, whenever I'm talking about anti-inflammatory foods, the more whole foods, honestly, the better. So what we're going to be looking at is we're adding in more of our fruits and vegetables. They're loaded with these antioxidants that can help reduce the inflammation in the body. We can look at adding extra fiber in through foods like even barley and oats. They're actually incredibly anti-inflammatory. Beans and lentils, adding in more of our omegas again, and even the olive oils for some heart healthy fats. And then we always play around too with things like spices. So adding in anti-inflammatory spices like turmeric, cinnamon, garlic, all of those can be just supportive. As well as though too, sometimes if we have chronic pain, it can be exacerbated with dehydration. So when I am looking at somebody's overall intake, we do look and make sure that the fluids are up too, just to help reduce any of those flare-ups or the pain that we're experiencing as well.
Awesome. And while I have you here, I'll just pass. There's a question right for you. So it's a fellow celiac person. They're saying they struggle to get enough fiber in their diet. And so do you have any suggestions on gluten-free, high fiber?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. Yes, I have tons. So if you want a good bread that is loaded in fiber, go get the Promise bread. Like that is going to be your best friend. You can even eat it untoasted. There are different ways I just bump up fiber all the time too. So Nature Pass has these oatmeal bags that are instant oatmeal bags that are filled with buckwheat, chia seeds, ground flax, oats that I love using. They're high in fiber. And then I always add in, and I can get a gluten-free like ground flax or psyllium to add in. Again, just look at your intake too. And the more fruits and veggies you add, automatically the more your fiber goes up. And then play around with beans and lentils. They're loaded in fiber and they are going to be amazing for you. So I like taking the can of lentils. You can rinse them off and you can add them into salad. You can add them into your ground meat when you're done cooking them. You can stir them into your rice too. That will just naturally bump the fiber there. So I hope that gives you a few fun ideas.
Yeah, that's great. So what was the oatmeal that you had just said?
It's called Nature's Path, and it's, I don't know how to pronounce this. Brie, you might. It's like Quia. It's spelled Qia. They're a little brown packs. So it's by Nature's Path, and they are gluten-free.
Awesome. Perfect. Actually, Briana, did you, when you were talking about soy, when you got disconnected there, did you want to jump back into that question? I can read it again for you if you want.
Oh, that's okay. I know, I remember
Okay,
the question. Yeah.
great.
I think where I got my internet actually went out, so that's why I'm on my phone. I apologize. I can't seem to get it to reconnect. But what I was saying is the phytoestrogens from soy don't have a drug-like effect. So they're not like taking oral estrogen or using transdermal estrogen for hormone therapy. So it's not going to have that effect of increasing like your blood clot risk by consuming those foods.
Awesome. Thank you. And then another, coming back to something that you had presented on here, just some clarification. So the person saying, I thought that exercise snacking was now counting to the minutes. Why is it not to be included? If you want to speak back to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, great question. So my understanding is that the movement snacks, because you're not able to sustain like a given heart rate or intensity, it's not contributing to that disease risk reduction in the same way. So it's not that it has no effect on disease risk. We know that moving more and sitting less or being sedentary less is going to reduce our risks of many different diseases. However, there is additional benefit to sustaining some form of steady state activity. Even if you're looking at interval classes and things like that, you're usually, if you're going into a recovery heart rate and things like that, you are still usually having some sustained activity rather than, you know, like running up and down the stairs 4 times and then getting back to your email kind of thing. So it's just a different effect in the body. And that's why where my understanding is that we're not counting those towards the total minute of activity.
And this is sort of a related question that's in the Q&A here, but so is it this person is asking now about like 20-minute sessions versus 75-minute sessions, and so like we've got from the snacking and then 25-minute sessions, 75-minute sessions. So does it make a difference to the health benefits?
No. So like once you reach that 20-minute threshold of physical activity, that's when you're starting to use different fuel systems in your body. So different types of metabolism or fuel sources are being used, and so that is what is important when we look at like the sustained efforts. And so 20 minutes, 75 minutes, those are both good durations of activity. Like if 20 minutes is what's realistic, that's still going to benefit you.
Awesome. Yeah, excellent. I have a question here. Sorry, one that just caught me as being very interesting. So I'm being mindful of time, so we have about 5 more minutes for questions, so we'll try to get through as many as we can. This person says, as a 75-year-old, I take a calcium supplement in the morning, but that is also when I have the most calcium in my food. Is that a problem to have a lot of calcium at one time in the day? We'll go over to Katie maybe for that. Oh, we lost Katie. Briana?
Oh my goodness, Katie doesn't live far from me. I wonder if there's like an internet outage or something. Anyhow, the idea, so when we look at like recommendations around calcium intake, if we're using supplements, we often try to spread them out throughout the day for optimal absorption. So like if somebody needs 1,500 milligrams of supplemental calcium, which would be a huge, like that's a heroic amount, but we would divide it as like 500 3 times a day or something like that, just for optimal absorption. But what I tell my patients is, if in this example specifically, it's a great example, if the only time you're going to take your calcium is with your breakfast that is like Greek yogurt or whatever that's full of calcium, that we just do that, right? We don't get fancy and say, no, 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 you got to take it 4 hours later because you're going to get better absorption. It's like, then you're probably going to forget 4 hours later, and then you're not going to take it at all. So, and we don't have like cellular level science. It's like, oh, you're actually, or I guess not even cellular level, like more like macro level, where we're like, oh, the people who spread out their calcium throughout the day died less from hip fractures or whatever, right? So like when you look at the outcome, that like the endpoint outcome that you're looking for, the data is very, very specifically, you need this much calcium in your day. It's not the women or the patients that divided it in a fancy way did better than the ones who didn't. And I think that's really important to come back to that concept in general with our health. Because what happens is we get bogged down by all that information, and then we just don't do anything. We're like, oh, she said to take it like at dinner, and I'm taking it in the morning, so maybe I just won't take it at all. And then like that's actually not a good scenario. I think Katie's back. So Katie, the question was, if you're taking your calcium with a high calcium meal, would it be better to spread it out throughout the day? And I was just saying, like, what's best is that you actually take it.
It totally. There is like a max amount of absorption at a time, but honestly, get it in. If you can move it and it's convenient for you and you're gonna do it, go for it. But yeah, it's exactly what Briana was saying.
And calcium also has other drug interactions, right? So like if you're on antibiotics, you can't take them with calcium. And if you take iron, you can't take it with calcium. And so it starts to get like really picky, and you're like, when am I going to take this? So just do your best.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to try to fit in 2 more questions here just in a couple of minutes. But so we have one of the questions here. So I'm in my 60s, and recently muscles are feeling stiff, especially in my knees. Is this normal, or what can I do to alleviate this? Examples, like it takes a long time at night to get my knees to straighten if I'm laying on my side.
Yeah. So sorry, in your 60s and feeling very stiff, like it takes a long time to get moved. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that like warming up your body, like even when you first wake up in the morning, I know this doesn't answer the night part, but you may want to do like ankle rotations or movements before you even let your feet hit the floor. Bend your knees, or like slightly bend your knees back and forth. I feel like a cat making biscuits right now when I'm doing this movement. But like moving your knees back and forth very subtly, very gently, to wake up those muscles. And then I would even consider working with like a physiotherapist or a trainer, with that being the goal, right? Of increasing or reducing stiffness and improving mobility. That probably has to also do with joint lubrication. And so when you're dehydrated, and I don't know if this is true, but for the person, but if you don't drink very much water throughout the day, or you are dehydrated, you are going to have not as good joint lubrication. So
excellent. Okay, I'm going to sneak in one more. Is vitamin D3 a better supplement than just vitamin D for postmenopausal women? Katie?
Yeah, for vitamin D, we go with the vitamin D3. It has a better absorption than what we'd say is the vitamin D2. So yes, the recommendations that we had, and this is again just very general, they can go up based on individual needs. But up to 70 years old, we're looking at 600 international units. Over 70, it bumps up to 800. But again, we can have a higher amount of intake, sometimes even with my patients too, because it is a fat-soluble vitamin. I love this fact that you could take 2,000 today, and then you don't have to take it for a few days because it actually does store a little bit. And so you can spread it out if you find it's challenging to remember taking it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, and we often do weekly vitamin D dosing if that's easier for patients as well.
Awesome. Okay, we are at 8:26. So the last thing I will ask of you is, someone put into the Q&A, do I require a referral to come see you?
No, you can self-refer. If you pop onto our website, flowyeg.ca, you'll be able to read more about Katie and myself, and our booking links are there as well. I'm not taking new patients, but I have a wait list. And we have a huge team now of other naturopathic doctors, nurse practitioner, Katie, of course, and a professional counselor for mental health.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so 8:27. We still have lots of people online. Thank you for joining us from all over. Just really love that. I want to also just sincerely thank Katie and Briana for being here, presenting today. It was so great. And everybody here in the chat, I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions. I'd like to try to keep us going to the time that we committed to. But your questions and your comments in the chat and everything just keeps the online community we have here so vibrant. And I know we're all walking away with new insights. So thank you to the speakers. Deeply grateful for your time. Thank you, Blue Cross, for being here as well. If you'd like to continue supporting the Women's Society, we'd be thrilled to have you consider joining as a monthly donor. There was a QR code that was up. There we go. It's coming up, so you can scan that with your mobile device. And it'll take you directly to the website where you can sign up to learn more information about the Women's Society, about other events that we're doing, and the things that we've achieved so far. So with that, that's all from me, all from the presenters. I'm just going to pass it back to Steph for the final word.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and all of you being here to join us today. I want to extend a very special thanks to those of you who've donated already during your Between Us registration, and to the individuals and businesses who support monthly and continue to be active supporters of the Lowest Whole Women's Society. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, a heartfelt thank you to our presenting sponsor, Alberta Blue Cross. We are incredibly grateful for your unwavering support and commitment to the Between Us series. It truly makes all the difference. Keep it
We're on a roll
for a feedback survey that will be coming your way in a $25 gift card. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, it cut out for a little bit.
Hello?
We're on a roll with internet issues. I don't
Oh,
know.
we're just taking turns.
Okay.
I'll just repeat the last part. So there's a
Yeah.
survey coming your way, and you'll have a chance to win a $25 gift card if you complete it, courtesy of Alberta Blue Cross, who is our presenting sponsor for the Between Us series. So we really do appreciate them, and they want to extend that appreciation to you. Will be contacted directly. Lastly, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all in the new year for our next session. We hope you have a wonderful evening and stay warm.